Hey guys, I'm Matt Schlicht from Zapchain, and I'm here with Teemu, CEO of CoinMotion. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about CoinMotion.
Well, thanks for having me. CoinMotion is one of the largest exchange and wallet services in Europe for Bitcoin. We currently operate in 11 countries in Europe, and that's us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for helping us out with this Bitcoin course.
Yeah, no worries.
So let's get into it. So what is different about Bitcoin than finance previously?
Than finance or like traditional money?
Like traditional money. So Now we have Bitcoin. It's kind of changed the game, and we can do a lot more things with it. Tell us a little bit about those things.
Well, the problem with traditional money, obviously, was that it was completely localized in a way which made it really difficult for people to transfer quickly between themselves. Now it's getting a little bit better, but Bitcoin, what it kind of allows you to do is to transfer, like I'm here with you in the States, I can transfer you money in a couple of minutes, and that's just never been possible before. And so it's pretty exciting for a bunch of industries where cross-border transfers are necessary, and they're actually pretty expensive. So now that there's Bitcoin, we can maybe streamline all those processes and make it really cheap in the same time.
Cool. So Bitcoin obviously is worth something, and people are spending it, they're buying things, they're sending it to each other. But where is the value of Bitcoin coming from? Like, what's backing Bitcoin?
Well, yeah, that's the first question everybody in finance always asks. The value comes out of the community, out of the people transacting with it. Similarly, with most currencies, there's not actually anything of value except a promise. In traditional currencies, that promise is made by the government or the central bank, while in Bitcoin, it's kind of a similar thing, except the promise is from the community. So no central authority, but a general understanding. And it's the same way all money works nowadays, is unless the person you're trying to pay understands that there is promised value in this, then it's not going to work.
So is it just because people are willing to spend money on it? Like people are exchanging it for a certain amount of money, and so that's where it gets its worth?
No, it's more that people are, well, yes, as converting it into other currencies or physical objects, like buying stuff, is what brings it value. All it requires, anything to have value, is that someone is willing to give you something back for that. So if I want to buy a car and someone is willing to sell me a car for Bitcoin, then that means Bitcoin has value, even if it is, in that case, just between those two people.
Right. So a lot of people have compared Bitcoin to gold. But one of the big differences between like gold and cash is that people are regularly spending cash every day to make transactions, whereas people are using gold as kind of a store of value. Do you think Bitcoin is going to be a store of value, or are people going to be using it in everyday transactions?
Well, I think the Bitcoin gold comparison is a pretty valid one. The reason gold cannot be used for payments is just because it's impossible to lug around and actually use in transactions very efficiently. And so Bitcoin kind of solves that problem. So I do think that there will be transactions happening in Bitcoin, because if you had gold and you could use it anywhere in the world with a smartphone, then you probably would.
That would be awesome.
It would be pretty cool.
Bitcoin. Yeah. So we've had credit cards, or at least a lot of the world has had access to credit cards, and that's made transactions really easy. What benefits does Bitcoin have over credit cards? Is it easier to make a transaction?
Well, it's more secure to make a transaction is one. Probably not easier. From like a European or an American consumer's perspective, the difference isn't that big when you're actually paying to a company who accepts credit cards. For the merchant or the company accepting, there is a difference. Generally, margins are pretty thin as it is, and credit card companies take quite a big cut. And so companies can avoid that. and they can hopefully at least pass that saving on to their consumers. And then also, when we start talking about people in countries where they don't have access to that, then this is kind of another way of doing it. And credit card companies have no incentive to try and help those people, basically.
I think that's actually a super interesting topic, because most people don't know that there's actually a large amount of people that don't have access to banks or credit cards. And there's people that they have access to phones and they're using minutes on their phones as a form of currency because they could send them to each other. But now they have Bitcoin. So have you seen adoption with Bitcoin in countries where they were kind of exchanging minutes or other forms of currency?
Well, I mean, Bitcoin adoption in developing countries is definitely growing really quickly. The problem they have, well, right now a lot of people are trying to crack the remittance problem, transferring money back home, which typically has ridiculously high fees, and it's pretty slow. So Bitcoin can definitely help with that. The problem with Bitcoin right now is no one is buying Bitcoin in those countries. And for that kind of system to work, you need the money coming back as well.
So how could we get them Bitcoin? Like, how do you think that'll eventually happen?
You mean how could we use Bitcoin to do the remittance?
People in third world countries, if they aren't buying Bitcoin right now, but Bitcoin could be a huge benefit to them because basically access to banking from wherever they are, how would we get that set up?
So that's the best and the easiest way is for every place, and there's all of the shops, all the companies accept Bitcoin. So you create a Bitcoin ecosystem. Then you don't need the conversion happening the other way.
Right.
If they can use the Bitcoin as it is. If they need to cash out, then there also needs to be transactions going the other way. So with just only Bitcoin, you can completely fix that. And then people here can buy into Bitcoin, send the Bitcoin, and people in the developing countries can just use the Bitcoin as it is.
Right. So would you say that when the world is doing that and everything is Bitcoin, that's kind of when we've reached mass adoption? So I'm getting paid in Bitcoin, and then I can go buy lunch with Bitcoin, and I never kind of have to convert it back to fiat?
Yeah, well, I think we're far off from that, but to some extent. So in the Western world, we'll probably never see that because there's no need for it. Pretty much everybody has bank accounts, everybody has smartphones, blah, blah. You don't really need that. You don't need Bitcoin day to day in the same way. In developing countries where there are a lot of unbanked people, there it's much more beneficial to have that ecosystem. And so I don't think you or me will ever do that. But for them, once enough merchants and stuff accept Bitcoin, they will be able to do that. And I think, that does mean like mass adoption. But it's not going to be worldwide. It's going to be in only the countries where it's needed, I think.
So do you think that the United States or other developed countries will be using Bitcoin, but maybe it's not specifically me using Bitcoin for transactions, but maybe the banks start using Bitcoin and the blockchain to kind of power finance?
That's definitely possible. I think Fedor is already kind of doing that, not with Bitcoin, but anyway, similar thing. So banks, big companies, anybody who has to do large cross-border transfers will definitely sooner or later start using Bitcoin. It's easier, it's cheaper, it's the best way to do it. But yeah, you won't be buying like your groceries with Bitcoin. But if you have a friend somewhere overseas, then you probably would be using Bitcoin for that.
Right. Yeah, no, it's. I don't think most people know this either, but back to remittance, where someone is coming from another country, they're coming to the United States, they're working really hard, they're making money, and then they're sending it back to their family.
Yeah.
Currently, the most popular way to do that is using Western Union.
Yeah.
And, they take, 10, 20% of that?
Something like that, yeah. I think it varies, but it is a significant amount of money from that
That's crazy.
amount that's sending, yeah.
Whereas Bitcoin would be what?
Well, yeah, Bitcoin inherently has no fees. You will, of course, be paying conversion fees, but I think I think within a couple of years, we're going to see those conversion fees go down to like 0.1, 0.2%. So significantly less than what you would ever be able to do with a traditional money sending operation.
Do you think Bitcoin will have much of an impact on Europe?
I think the impact is going to be similar. Europe obviously has a pretty consolidated financial market, and what I mean by that is that we have the SEPA transfer, which is like a standardized transfer for the whole euro area. But similarly as with the United States, we'll have the larger institutions probably using Bitcoin to do their transfers, and then the similar remittance thing as well. And Europe does have more kind of reason to use Bitcoin because there are so many fragmented markets than the United States does. But
right. So with credit cards, if I go spend money with my credit card at a merchant, there is a chance that someone could go steal my credit card information.
yeah.
So is Bitcoin more secure than that? And how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so this is what I mentioned earlier, that it is a more secure way of paying. It is more secure because when you pay with Bitcoin, you're not giving your information to anyone. You're only giving them the money. While credit cards, you stick your credit cards in every e-commerce shop you go to, which means they're generally very vulnerable. But if somebody hacks whatever online store, there's no way they can get any information they can use against you if you've been using Bitcoin. And so that's obviously a better way of ensuring your own financial privacy and security.
Right, but so people could still steal your information from the merchants, even if you were using Bitcoin, right? They could still get your address and your name.
Yeah.
Do you think Bitcoin could solve that problem, where maybe I could not sign up for an account with Amazon, and instead I could just be sending Bitcoin, and then with the Bitcoin actually goes on, my data is all on there?
Oh, on the Bitcoin. Yeah, it's completely possible. I don't think it'll solve, the addresses and everything else will be in their databases anyway. You need to tell them where to ship it and everything. But yeah, there's definitely potential for you to basically verify or you're making an order kind of on blockchain, which would be an interesting project. I think some people are working on something similar to that anyway.
Yeah, I think that would be super cool, because then literally nobody could get hacked, or even if they were hacked, they couldn't steal anything. And the most anyone could ever steal is they could steal your information, and not 100,000 people.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's on the blockchain, it's available.
That's true.
So
somebody out there needs to figure this out.
Yeah, so I don't think there's a big problem if somebody gets your address. But getting a credit card, you can literally go online and pay for stuff if you have someone else's credit card information.
Right. And
with Bitcoin, that will just not be possible.
So do you trust Bitcoin more than you trust your credit card?
Yeah, I definitely do. Your credit card information is all over the place, obviously, and that's why, it is. Every place you bought at, they've got the records of your credit card. They could theoretically use your credit card to pay for stuff. Anybody who gets access to that can pay for it. Your Bitcoin information is not so readily accessible. And I think trusting Bitcoin is trusting a proven technology over a central authority, which is mostly made up of people making decisions, doing quantitative easing or whatever, pushing money, new money into the market, deflating, inflating, affecting the currency. And so here, I'm putting my trust in a technology I understand, which is built on the same kind of security stuff that's used everywhere, what the banks use, the police use, except I'm the only one who's in control. Well, if you're using a bank, the bank is in control. It's like having an off-chain Bitcoin company where nobody knows really what's going on inside. And how the banks work currently, I think, is much more untrustworthy than Bitcoin. Because banks work on a so-called fractional reserve basis, which means that when you put money into a bank, they're going to go off and lend it to someone else. And so they have a fraction of your money in their holdings. And so when there is a financial crisis or a bank run, which means that everybody is trying to take their money out of the bank account, your money could just disappear. And you don't really ever know what's happening there. It's just like numbers on a screen. While Bitcoin, I know 100% sure that my money is in my wallet. It's not going anywhere from there. I can check off the blockchain, I can make a transaction, whatever, and I'm the only one who determines what happens to that. If I want to lend it, I will, but it's not going to be someone else just doing all that.